when people in the media say, some people are saying, my response is intellect, my response cognitively is some people are stupid. Yeah, look, some people really think the moon landings never happened, that it's a big conspiracy theory. Some people will say anything. And frankly, folks, if you haven't figured this one out, the moment the media person says it out loud, it's true that some people are saying something that is silly and unrelated because the media person just said it. When we respond to that, the story can be written so that our very response legitimizes the counterpoint to our own, even when the counterpoint is, frankly, can be bizarre, and we have just legitimized the bizarre.
Geez, and I thought they were just trying to have a conversation with me this whole time.
I may be Scrooge Deluxe in this cast. I feel bad. We're really hammering this point home, giving a lot of background to it, but this is important. And I think if we start here, as this is the foundation for our association with media and the press, it becomes much easier to make solid recommendations for how to appear professional and how to get your point across in the best possible way if we understand the risks.
Right. Well, unfortunately, for a lot of people, they don't understand that, the media person doesn't know you, right? And even if your comments are absolutely 100% factually correct, and you're right, it doesn't mean you're going to be appreciated.
Yeah. Okay. And something else, not only, even if the media person thinks you're right or not, let me just share something with you. And there's some people in the media will probably be surprised by this. The vast majority of media people that I've talked to don't know the details of what they're reporting about. They're reporters. They're professionals in the media. Okay, or they're bloggers, or they have a website somewhere where they aggregate information. They don't know about the details of what we're doing.
Right. I mean, how could they be? I mean, if you're in the position that you are, and I mean, how could you expect somebody to understand your business as well as you do when you spent 20 years in it, or even only 10 years in it? Are you suggesting that somebody could come into your company for a week at most and all of a sudden understand all the nuances of your argument? I doubt it.
Yeah. And they're not going to give you 2 hours to lay it all out and give a presentation. They're going to get 5 minutes because they're driving the train. And frankly, if you need an hour and they only want to give you 10 minutes, the answer is, yet again, no comment. But look, even if everything we say is true, that is not a defense for the fact that those true things that we said were made to look foolish and reflected poorly on our firm, on our company. Our purpose in talking to the press is to have the press report favorably on our firm or on us. Our purpose is not for all truth to be published. So truth is not a defense. This is the equivalent of the male of the species, sorry folks, not knowing the right answer to the question, do I look fat in this? Right? That's a classic, sure, you can answer truthfully if you think that whomever you're with looks fat in whatever he or she is wearing. Look, your firm has faults. Everyone knows your firm has faults. Saying out loud that your firm has faults is not a smart thing to do. Okay? We don't need the press repeating us saying our firm has faults. Let them do it. And look, folks, nobody knows who you are. Okay? No one knows you. Maybe somebody's listening who is a public figure, but usually not. But they likely do know or can learn about your firm. So anything we say, of course, is considered our firm speaking, whether we intend it to be or not.
When you shared this with me, I did not know this, but when you did share it with me, I was shocked.
This is my favorite part of the cast, by the way.
The fact that the press can legally misquote us. So explain that, because it's just almost unbelievable.
This is, when I first read it, I have to tell you, I at one point considered having a career in the press and just didn't like it. This was like in high school before I went to the academy, and I just didn't like it. And I started paying attention to the press and so on. And so I was interested in things related to it. And then I read this and I was just stunned. Now, frankly, I pay very close attention to what people say and try to understand what they mean and also how it can be misinterpreted. And that's why we make such a big deal about communication. In fact, after Horstman's first law, it's all about people. The second law is more communication is better. And when you combine that with Drucker's point that communication is what the listener does, you realize how hard it is to communicate well. But look, this is true. This is something that was made quite public in the U.S. in the Supreme Court ruling, but it may not be true elsewhere, but it's certainly true in the U.S. For those of you who think that truth and being accurately quoted will be your defense, you're mistaken. You are out of your league already. You have no say in how you're going to be quoted. The media are not rewarded for accurate quotes. They're not. Now, look, we're not saying they're rewarded for inaccurate quotes. If they're known for making stuff up or doing stuff inaccurately for a long period of time, they're going to get in trouble for that. It's just that the definition of inaccurate is broad enough that unless they purposefully put words in our mouth that actually violate our intent as they understood our intent, and we can prove that we not only didn't say those things, but we didn't intend them, they get to decide everything about what amounts to accuracy. And look, here's what it boils down to. This is how bad the problem is. You will not believe this, folks. In the U.S., the United States Supreme Court has found that if a reporter believes that they are accurately representing what we meant when we said something, they can put quotation marks around words that we did not actually say, and that is included in the right of the freedom of the press. Think about that for a minute. Seriously, that's the law in the United States. Do you really think that you can be certain that you're going to be accurately represented? I mean, literally, I'll tell you, I get asked things all the time and I have to correct people. And I know sometimes I come across as a scold because people say, "Oh, do you mean this?" And I say, "Well, no, I didn't mean that. I said X and you just said Y." No. In my head, sometimes I say, "Aren't you listening? You came to me and asked for advice. I told you exactly what to do. And then you suggested you're going to do something that would create the completely opposite effect." And it's clear that I didn't communicate clearly, but I am amazed repeatedly how hard it is to get a point across. And now they can put quotes around things. And just moving the word just or the word not can make an enormous difference. And that is why people who are quoted in the press are often seen as repeating their points over and over again so that they can't be misquoted. That's why people actually like being on TV rather than in print, because print can move things around a little bit. And no offense against newspapers here. We love the Wall Street Journal. We love the New York Times. We love lots of newspapers. We love the Financial Times and the Globe and Mail, but nonetheless, you can be misquoted and it can be legal. And if you're talking about anything complicated, and by definition, almost anything you know of to some high degree is going to be complicated to a reporter since they don't know what you know about your industry and your company and your product and so on, you're going to be misquoted and it's going to be okay.
Yeah, that no comment thing sounds better every time.
Yeah, I know. We're just
as we get further down this cast, it sounds better.
Yeah.
Okay, so anybody who knows you knows eventually that you would come up with some rule that had to do with Notting Hill. So, and finally, we've reached the pinnacle of career tools because now we have the Anna Scott Notting Hill rule.
Yeah,
what is that?
My kids like Notting Hill, even just because I've played it so many times for them. It's sort of an old fashioned movie with really good dialogue, and I have two nieces and a brother, two nieces who live in Manhattan who routinely sent me out of the blue emails that say things like, "Careful there, Vicar," which is a quote from another part of the movie. But,
and let me just tell you, not to bore everybody on this podcast, but when I'm with you and those kind of comments get made, I do roll my eyes. Okay. Just,
yeah, you do. Right. And rightfully so. Look, in the movie Notting Hill, Julia Roberts' character, who happens to be a famous actress in the movie, hides out in her soon-to-be erstwhile and former boyfriend's home, and because there's been a scandal, and then some pictures are taken of her there, and she gets furious because the press are outside taking pictures when she went there in order to avoid the press because of her previous scandal. And in it, William attempts to placate her. In other words, they're starting to argue about the press being involved, and she's a public figure and he's not. He's a nobody. And basically he's attempting to placate her by suggesting that, this is just one day's news. And he says, "I mean, today's newspapers will be lining tomorrow's waste paper bins." And she says, "Excuse me?" And he says, "Well, it's just one day. Today's papers will all have been thrown away tomorrow." And she says this, she says, "You really don't get it. This story gets filed. Every time anyone writes anything about me, they'll dig up these photos. Newspapers last forever." And folks, the internet lasts forever. If you talk to the press without training you become Anna Scott, and everything you say will last forever. I think that actually the movie came out in 99 before Google even really hit us. And things lasted forever then. Mistakes made with the media will last forever. They will haunt your career forever, and you will regret them forever. And I've read Wall Street Journal articles where someone tried to scrub their Google search of themselves. And they were only partially successful, paying money to firms that tried to do it, to remove quotes and comments that this person had made. There's a future cast in it about your public persona in public places, in new media in more detail. But folks, the Anna Scott Notting Hill Rule says it won't go away just because it's not in the news today. We beseech you, no comment.
Yeah. Well, I mean, given that, though, it doesn't make sense to go into, I'll use a military analogy here, we go into a battle where you don't know what kind of weapons your enemy has. So in this case, it probably makes sense to keep track of what is out there in the public so that you're not surprised.
Yeah, and what's funny about this, I'm amazed at the number of people who don't do this. And this is we are talking about press relationships here, and there's two sides to that. One, what we're saying to them, and the other side is what they're saying to or about us. And I'm amazed that people don't do this separate, because whether they're going to talk to the press or not, it would just be good just to know what your company is doing, because so often companies do such a poor job of internal communications, right? So we recommend that every person listening maintain their own clipping service to allow us to keep track of what's in the news about our firm, because the press, the media are outside your firm, and all profits come from outside our firm. And so that's where the profits are. Everybody in the company is actually a cost center, whereas customers are profit centers, and customers are external to us. And so it makes sense to pay attention to what the outside world is saying, particularly when it's so darn easy to do it, right? In addition to our being careful in our communications with the media, all media, we ought to know what they're saying about us. We're going to learn stuff about what our company hasn't told us, but also how the media portray us, to your point. And that's good training for us in terms of how we might be treated when we're being talked to. And look, the old way of doing this is called a clipping service. For those of you who don't know, there are actually firms who do provide this, whether they literally provide clippings, literally. In the beginning, that's what they were, press clippings in physical paper form, to subscribers of their services. But we don't need that, right? We just need to choose a newsreader and or an RSS feed and search. There are many places you can search on terms related to our professional interests. So look, include your own name. Right? I think, Mike, don't we do a Google thing on our names, and each one of us?
Yes.
We might, yeah. And your firm's name. So I think in the beginning, one of the first ones I remember was Technorati, and you could go to Technorati and say, hey, scour everything, send your robots, your spiders out there, and look for manager tools. And we would get comments, and we'd find comments on other people's blogs about us. So include your name, your firm's name, your competitors' names. I'm amazed at people who find out about stuff about their competition through the press, because they're not talking to their customers about what the competition is doing with those customers. One of the problems with this in the beginning, particularly if you're a large firm, you're going to get a lot of hits, right? And maybe you only need a weekly digest that allows you to scan at a high level. And then at some times you might want to, if there's something going on that's noteworthy, you may want to do a daily review. But over time, you may have to change how many sources you ask for information about your firm or your division and so on. And you may want to add terms and take them away depending upon how much information you can digest. We're not suggesting you spend an hour on this every week, but there ought to be some easy way for you to be capturing what is being said in public about those associations you have. And you might even include nonprofits that you're associated with. So that's just something to turn the tables a little bit, to keep in mind that even if we're not speaking to the press, this press is speaking about us, and we need to know about it. The press and the media. And before